So what we're going to be doing today is we're just going to be graphing equations based off of just factoring and finding our x-intercepts. So remember that when we factor, we're able to find our x-intercepts. So before we factor, we must ensure that the quadratic equation is set to 0. Doing this is necessary because when you're looking for x-intercepts and the x-intercepts, they happen when my y value is 0. So when we factor, before we do anything, I need to figure out if there's a number I can take out first, and then I can use the sum and product to help me factor out my equation. So not all quadratics are factorable. So remember, if it's not factorable, it is not possible. So I need to solve this by factoring. And when I have to solve, I have to find these pieces of information. So I have to find my y-intercept, my x-intercepts, and my vertex. So that's what I have to do when I solve. So the first one is pretty easy. I have x squared minus 2x minus 24. So right off the bat, I'm able to find my y-intercept, which is what, Olivia? Yeah. So my y-intercept is 0 and negative 24 because that is my last number in standard form. Now, what am I going to use to figure out my x-intercepts? What do I have to do with that trinomial? Olivia? Okay, so what's my product and what's my sum? Okay, so two numbers that multiply to negative 24 and add up to negative 2, which is what? Olivia? So 6 times negative 4 gives me negative 24, which is good. And 6 plus negative 2, plus negative 4, which is negative 2, so that's perfect. So how would this look like fully factored? What would my two brackets be? Olivia? Yep. X plus 6 and x minus 4. So what are my x-intercepts? Someone else, let's see. Remember, they're always opposite of what they seem from the bracket, Jade. Yep. So I got x is equal to negative 6 and x is equal to 4.
I think it's negative 6 times 4 because 6 plus negative.
All right, negative 6 times 4. Thank you. Should be x minus 6, x plus 4. Okay, so then what are my x-intercepts now? Emma?
Positive 6 and negative 4.
And negative 4. Perfect. So we have our two x-intercepts, we have our y-intercept. Now the last thing to do to solve is to find our vertex. So what are we going to start with first, Olivia? Because negative 6 plus 4 gives me negative 2. Yeah. So what do I do to find my vertex, Brooklyn?
You find the axis.
Okay.
So 6 plus negative 4 divided by 2.
Which gives me what?
2 divided by 2 is 1.
Yep. So my axis of symmetry happens at x is equal to 1. So now what's my next step to do to help me find the y value of the vertex, Emma?
Can you plug it into the equation?
Yep. So like I said, I prefer to do it in factored form because it's easier. So I got x minus 6 times x plus 4. Sub in 1 for x. So I got 1 minus 6 times 1 plus 4, which means I got negative 5 times, I literally wrote the answer in the question. So negative 5 times 5, and what's the y value of my vertex? Negative 25. So my vertex happens at 1 and negative 25. So now this is going to be pretty easy to just graph. Start with my x-intercepts. So I got 6. Graph my y-intercept and my vertex. So this would be my y-intercept over here, which is 0 and negative 24. And then 1 and negative 25 would be down here. So this is what my graph would look like. That's it. Just connect the dots. Yep. I got negative 25.
Yeah, how did you get a positive one?
Because 6 plus negative 4 is positive 2. Oh. It should be negative 6 plus 4. Whoops. Off day today. So it should be negative. Actually, no, it's 6 plus 4. What am I talking about? Text 6 plus negative 4. Because that's my x-intercepts, right?
Yeah.
So I add those two together and divide by 2. So 6 plus negative 4 gives me positive 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Is this graph opening up or down?
Oh, yeah, I know that. I know how to see it, because if it's opening up, then it's the minimum. Yeah,
Yep.
it's maximum. But how do we know if it's opening up or down?
Is it, what's my, so you see the x squared? You see how it has no number in front of it?
Yeah, okay.
Is it a positive or a negative 1?
Positive?
Yeah, so it opens up.
So what is positive? It opens up.
Yep.
Positive.
I made it by myself.
So for the next.
Minus 25. What does that look like? 9x squared minus 25. It's a binomial, but we learned, no, we don't. What is it?
You find the greatest common factor,
Nope.
or just the common
Not this one.
difference is great.
Camilla, yeah, it's a difference of squares.
Why?
How do you know that it's a difference? Because they have what square is. This square? Yeah, like 25 square is 5 minus 25.
So because they both have square roots. So if I take the square root of 9x squared, what is it? So what's the square root of 9? What's the square root of x squared? So 9x squared has a square root of 3x. What's the square root of 25? Okay. So remember, when I have a difference of squares, I'm going to have two brackets. Okay, one's going to have a positive, one's going to have a negative. Okay, so what's my first bracket going to be? Read up. Okay, we'll see it. Go ahead. Yep, 3x minus 5. Okay, so again, what is my y-intercept here? What is my y-intercept? It's Olivia. Yeah.
Oh,
So my y-intercept is 0 and negative 25 because negative 25 is my constant number. Yes. Number that has no variable. Yes.
if you sub x for 0, you would just get negative 25?
Yep. Yes, Cynthia?
When you don't square negative 25, you just square it.
Because is there such thing as a negative square root?
Oh, no.
No. Now, what are my x-intercepts? Let's see if you guys can figure this one out. So remember, we have to set each bracket equal to what? And then you have to isolate for x. So let's see if you guys can isolate these guys for 0 and tell me what you get for x. Brooklyn?
So one would be negative 5 over 3, and the other one.
Yep. So x is equal to negative 5 over 3, and x is equal to positive 5 over 3. Okay, I'm not going to let you guys worry about the vertex right now, mainly because it's a fraction over 3, and you're going to get 1.666, and I don't want to look at that.
So like for the x-intercepts that are fractions, you want to keep the fraction?
Yeah, if I ask you to find the vertex, you can then put it into decimals to make it easier for you. Well, actually, no, we can find the vertex. It's going to be pretty easy. So again, to find our vertex, we find our axis of symmetry first, which is my 2 x-intercepts added together divided by 2. So x is equal to 5 over 3 minus 5 over 3, or plus negative 5 over 3. Divided by 2. So who can tell me what 5 over 3 plus negative 5 over 3 gives me? 0. So what is my axis of symmetry?
0.
Yeah. So then what's my pardon?
What does it give?
Oh, because when I add both of my x-intercepts together, so I have positive 5 over 3 and negative 5 over 3. So what's 5 over 3 plus negative 5 over 3? It's the same thing as saying 5 over 3 minus 5 over 3, which is 0. Which means, however, we already know that when my x value is 0, what's my y value? Nope, it's up here. Negative 25.
How do you know that's negative 25?
Because when I plug in 0 for x, I'm going to get negative 25. So I get y is equal to 3x plus 5 times 3x minus 5. If I plug it in for 0, I get 0 plus 5 and 0 minus 5, which is 5 times negative 5, which gives me negative 25. So in this case, my y-intercept is the same thing as my vertex.
Wait, how is the y vertex the same as the vertex?
Because when I find my axis of symmetry, I get x is equal to 0. Okay? And when I plug in 0 for x in my equation, I get a value of negative 25. So my vertex is 0 and negative 25, which is the same thing as my y-intercept. Yes, Abby? Olivia, you got a question?
Why do we need to figure out the y-intercept?
Because it's just an easy way to, so when you draw your graph, and if you get something wrong, your y-intercept will generally tell you if your graph is going to be getting to a max or a min. So in case you mess up the vertex, your y-intercept is going to help you figure out, okay, if I did something wrong, I know my vertex is supposed to be negative instead of positive.
How would you grow a negative 5?
It's 1.66, right?
Oh.
Yeah, you just convert it to a decimal and then just graph it.
You set it down. Down, down.
Up or down? Okay, so is it going to be a max or a min? Yep. So you draw your x-intercepts first, then your vertex, and then connect them all together. Okay, and the last one we have is 4x squared plus 20x is equal to negative 25. So what do I have to do with this negative 25 over here? Jade? Oh, you got it, Emma. Say it.
Move it over.
Move it over, so it becomes what?
Positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we have a trinomial. So am I able to factor out a number first? What do I get when I take 25 and divide it by 2?
Never mind.
Yeah. So I can't factor out a greatest common factor. So now I have to use sum and product. Jade?
So you multiply 4 and 25 to get the
Mm-hmm. What's my sum?
20.
Okay. So two numbers that multiply to 100 and add up to 20. Read up. 10 and 10. So 10 times 10 is equal to 100. 10 plus 10 is equal to 100. 10 plus 10 is equal to 20. What am I talking about? All right. So now we're going to do the factoring by decomposition or grouping. So I get 4x squared plus 10x plus 10x plus 25. So again, we're going to focus on 2 at a time. So let's focus on 4x squared and 10x. What is the biggest common factor between those two? Brooklyn? 2x, which means I'm dividing everything in there by 2x. Now, can someone tell me what's left over in my bracket? Olivia? Oh, it's okay. So 2x plus 1? Plus 1 or plus 5? Plus 5. Okay, now we look at 10x and 25. What's my biggest common factor? Jade? 5? So divide everything by 5. And what's left in the bracket? 2x plus 5. So as you can see here, both my brackets are the same. So what is my fully factored form going to look like? Emma?
2x plus 5 and then 2x plus 5.
Okay, and how else can I write that?
2x plus 5 to 4.
Yep. 2x plus 5 squared is equal to 0. Perfect.
Would you guys deduct the marks if you just left that 2x plus
For your test, yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. So now let's figure out what my y-intercept is first. So based off of my equation in standard form, what is my y-intercept? 25. It's going to be 0, 25. Now, can someone tell me what my x-intercept is going to be? What is my x-intercept going to be? What do I have to set my bracket equal to?
Oh, I did it
Yep.
wrong.
So what would it be if I set it equal to 0? So 2x plus 5, set that equal to 0. What's my x-intercept going to be? Read up. Positive or negative? Yep.
Wait, I have a question. I
Mhm.
thought when doing the X-intercept, you have to. Oh, I did that. Never mind.
Yeah.
Wait, so is negative 5 versus the same as negative 2.5?
Yep. So x is equal to negative 5 over 2 is going to be my x-intercept. Yes, Rita?
So both of both x-intercepts would be -5. So if they were the same on.
So when you have something like this, when your x-intercepts, when you have a perfect square trinomial, that x-intercept over here, this is also the same thing as your vertex.
How do you know that it's the same thing as a vertex? Yeah.
Because when you have a perfect square, what this is telling me is I only have one x-intercept, and because it's a perfect square, my graph is going to bounce off of that point, which makes it the vertex. So when you graph this out, you have negative 2.5 over here. And my y-intercept is 25. So when I'm drawing my graph, what happens at that x-intercept is my graph's just going to bounce off. So whenever you have a perfect square trinomial, your x-intercept is going to be the same thing as your vertex. That's only when you have a perfect square trinomial.
So how would we know the other point?
No, for this one it's easy because all you need is your x-intercept and your y-intercept, and that's it.
So you don't even.
Nope, because it's a perfect square.
Oh, because it'll reflect perfectly.
Yep.
Got it.
Could you repeat that last part?
So when you have a perfect square trinomial, your x-intercept and your vertex are going to be the same.
So does that mean you don't have to do the axis of symmetry?
Nope,
You just
'cause you're-
plug it into the equation?
Because your axis of symmetry is your x-intercept.
So if this is because it'll like reflect like exactly like it is.
Yep.
Would you ever ask the question to like find the other x value?
No, there's no point because I'm just going to ask you to sketch. I'm not asking for a detailed.
Oh, you did.
Wait, could you show what the perfect square trinomial looks like?
Oh, so perfect square trinomial is when you factor it and you have two identical brackets like we did here. Or you can.
Scary.
All right, so number 2, I want you guys to solve on your own after the lesson. So you're going to show me that after. So don't worry about this now. I want you guys to challenge yourselves after the lesson and do that before you start the homework. Now we have a word problem. So the profit of a skateboard company can be modeled by the function P of X. So profit is equal to negative 63 plus 133X minus 14X squared, where P of X is the profit in thousands of dollars and X is the number of skateboards sold in thousands. So when we find our final answer, what do we have to multiply those by if it's in thousands? Cynthia?
I'm lost.
So because our profit is in thousands and our number of skateboards are also in thousands, when we factor out and find our x-intercepts and our vertex, I have to multiply those values by 1,000. Okay? They just basically simplified everything here. and divided it by 1,000 to give us easier numbers to work with. Yes?
Can you explain it again, like really, really quickly? I just got confused.
Yeah.
We have to factor that, is that what?
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah. So, like I said, they gave you guys easier numbers to work with because technically our profit and our number of items sold should be in thousands. So it should be like 63,000 plus 133,000 X minus 14,000 X. But because they decided to make your life easier somewhat, they just divided everything by 1,000. So determine when the company is profitable by calculating the break-even points. So the break-even points in this case is what? What do you guys think the break-even points are? Yep, the X-Intercepts. That's when they make $0, okay? So when you break even, you make $0, which basically means you paid back whatever it is you purchased. So I'm going to rewrite this differently. So remember, I always want the X squared first. So P of X is equal to negative 14X squared plus 133X minus 63. So is there any number I can factor out first? Remember, I always want my X squared to be positive, sorry.
One, -1.
Yeah.
Seven.
Factor out is 7, works?
Yeah.
Okay, so 133 divided by 7. Yeah. So you're right. I'm going to factor out the negative. So we'll factor out by -7. We'll take out the -7, which means I'm dividing everything here by -7. So what's left in my bracket? Jade?
7.
No, -14 divided by -7.
2x.
Okay, 2x squared.
Um,
Use your calculator.
I think it's 19.
Minus 19. Okay, good.
And minus 9. Or
Well,
plus 9.
plus 9. Yeah.
Why didn't you put it in the order that it was already in?
Because I remember when we're writing a trinomial, it's always from highest exponent to lowest exponent. Plus, it makes it easier to factor after. So now we have our trinomial on the inside, which is 2x squared minus 19x plus 9. So what am I going to do to factor this? Olivia. Okay, which is what? Okay. What's my sum? So what are two numbers that multiply to 18 but add up to -19? You're going to say the same thing? Yeah, -18 and -1. So -18 times -1 is equal to +18. -18 plus -1 is equal to -19. Perfect. We got that set up. So now remember, most of you forget this -7. Don't forget it. -7 times 2x squared minus 18x minus 1x plus 9. So remember, we're going to look at two of them at a time. So the first one we're going to look at is 2x squared and -18x. What is my greatest common factor between those two? 2 what? 2x. So if I divide everything by 2x, what's left over in that bracket? Jade?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How come you didn't put in the 19?
Because remember, -18x minus x is the same thing as what? -19x. Okay, remember, because my x squared has a number in front of it, I have to factor that trinomial after using the grouping method. Remember, that's when you get the two brackets have to be the same thing.
So if you put it in the,
What do you mean?
if you put in the -19x.
Well, if I put in the -19x, I'm just left with the same thing over here. So I can't really do anything. So what's left in my bracket? Read up. Yep, x minus 9. Now let's look at my second one. Negative x and positive 9. What's the greatest common factor, Olivia? Negative 1. So divide everything by negative 1. And what's left in my bracket? Olivia? Perfect. So now, as you can notice, Jade, my brackets are the same. So what's my fully factored equation going to be? Emma?
Would it be negative 7x bracket 2x minus 1 and then bracket x minus 9?
Well, not negative 7x, just negative 7, right?
Oh yeah, negative 7. Okay.
So now, in order to figure out our break-even points, I need to determine my X-intercepts, which means I have to set each bracket equal to 0. So what's my first X-intercept? Remember, I'm going to set 2x minus 1 equal to 0. What's my first one?
So wait, you said, okay, my bad. Did you do the negative 7 as well? Or?
No, negative 7 doesn't have a variable with it, so it's not an X-intercept. Olivia? 9. Okay, we'll do that one first. X is equal to 9. And how about the second one? Read up. Okay. So I know some of you would probably put, because you guys want to read the in thousands part, you'd be like, oh, they'll break even when they sell half a skateboard and 9 skateboards. Okay. But because it's in thousands, because they are sold in thousands, the skateboards, I have to multiply each X-intercept by what? Yeah. So what's the first one? What's 0.5 or 1/2 times 1,000? 500. And Emma, you said the other one?
9,000.
Yeah. So therefore, in order to break even, they need to sell 500 or 9,000 skateboards. Yep. So like, oh.
There's no way to do this in like with the quick stop method. Right? You have to with the product and sum.
You can do it.
I've been trying to for the past like 5 minutes. And I can't get that.
So what do you have? 2 and 1? That's how you would do it. That's 2 times.
I mean from the 14 and.
Oh no, you have to common factor first. Common factor, yeah, because if you work with 2 big numbers, it's gonna take forever. Okay, so like I said, do number 2 on your own. I'm gonna come around and check this. Yeah.
Are we gonna have to know what the numbers are for capture?
It's not that. I'll give you a hint on how to do it. So like I said, do number 2. I'll come around and check it, and then start working on the practice.